what you said, Doctor, on just a question I had is, do any of you see a link between Iran and Hezbollah and the Muslim Brotherhood organizations here in the United States, such as CARE or ISNA?
Not to my knowledge.
I'll take it from the left to the right. How about that? Ambassador?
It's out of my area to comment specifically on that, sir.
Mr. Farah?
I spent considerable time looking at ISNA and the other Muslim Brotherhood legacy groups here, and I did not come across an Iranian tie into those organizations.
Similarly, my expertise does not extend to the synergy between those two.
Okay.
I've never heard of a linkage, but I can't speak authoritatively.
Could you possibly expand upon it then, both with the Muslim Brotherhood, Iran being a Shia and the Muslim Brotherhood being Sunni, and each of them independently want to see the destruction of the United States? Can you see there's kind of them independently going on at this point, or do you see them joining up forces later on? Mr. Farr?
Well, I think one of the unique things about the Brotherhood is its ability to bridge this Sunni-Shia divide. It's the only transnational organization that does that. And if you listen to the testimony of Yusuf Nada, the self-described foreign minister of the Muslim Brotherhood, immediately after 9/11, he went on Al Jazeera 2 hours a night for 5 nights in a row. And he described there how the Brotherhood accompanied Ayatollah Khomeini back. There were 3 planes that went back. One was the Ayatollah, one was the security, and one was the Muslim Brotherhood. And so they've been very involved in bridging that, the Sunni-Shia divide. So I think that if it were, I don't think they're averse to that. I think one of the, as has been commented on, the ability to reach out across to Sunnis in Latin America is not unusual for the Brotherhood. It's unusual for almost any other group that of the pan-Muslim world to be able to do that. So if you look at the underlying ideology in the Muslim Brotherhood testimony that's presented in the Holy Land case, the desire to hoist the United States on its own petard, et cetera, is consistent with different strains of radical Islamic thought about the United States, whether they would be operationalizing in the United States. I would add one small thing, and that is that if you look at where the Muslim Brotherhood established its financial capacity and housed its money, it was in this hemisphere. It wasn't elsewhere. We had the Bahamas. We had the different banks in the Bahamas, Bank Al-Taqwa particularly, and you have multiple offshore companies I investigated in 2004, 2005 that were all of the major Brotherhood leaders had significant offshore and shell companies established in Panama. So they clearly are familiar with this hemisphere and like to use it at least for financial reasons.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Noriega, given Chavez's regime's involvement and support for the FARC and the FARC-Hezbollah connection, how do you recommend the United States move forward in our foreign policy towards Venezuela?
Well, I think we took some positive steps by sanctioning PDVSA, the state-run oil company of Venezuela, for its support for Iran, for providing gasoline in violation of U.S. law to Iran. I know that there's a debate between designating Venezuela as a terrorist state. I prefer, since that's a decision the Secretary of State, the President would have to make, I think it's better to enable and encourage law enforcement to go after, in a tactical way, those institutions, individuals that support, to provide logistical, financial support for terrorism. For example, Conviasa, Venezuelan airline, has regular service from Caracas to Tehran and Damascus, and that's not the only persons that they carry, but they do ferry operatives, recruits, and cargo to and from. And
doesn't Venezuela shield that from Interpol? Is that correct?
Pardon me?
Doesn't Venezuela shield the passengers on that aircraft?
It's my understanding that the passenger manifests are generally reserved, and they are people that do not pass normal immigration when they come and go, and cargo doesn't go through customs. Again, this is one final point. Just 2 weeks ago, a State Department official said that flight wasn't going anymore. Well, that's because the Venezuelans did a press release and said it isn't going anymore. We have to do better than reading press releases from Caracas. In point of fact, my sources say that flight goes every Saturday from Caracas to Tehran.
Just one more question real quick. Mr. Farrar, you piqued my interest when you said, I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. Given means and opportunity to use weapons of mass destruction, do you believe Hezbollah would use them here in the United States?
I think if they viewed that in their interest, and particularly in Iran's interest, that they are positioning themselves, I believe it's primarily a defensive positioning. I don't believe it's an offensive intention without what they would view as provocation. But I think that if you read their literature and listen to what they say, and they say it extensively, particularly in Venezuela with Iran, that they view that as their right and moral imperative to destroy the United States, and the weapons of mass destruction are a licit way for them to do that, yes.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your yield, and I'll yield back.
Thank you.